And here we go. Thank you everyone for joining us today. You're here because you selected Power On. This is the workshop that's going to help you, will introduce you to the teacher resource guide for CS Equity using this graphic novel. Joining me today is a few of my colleagues, and we're going to introduce ourselves in the next slide. But welcome to the Constellations PD Summit. Today is June 22nd, 2022. And Shaina is going to do a quick activity.
Yes. So right now, if you can, and we'll do the same to model this, but if you can introduce yourself with your pronouns and your favorite fictional character. So this could be comic, book, or movie. Lily, what's yours? Well, you can tell us your character when we go to the next slide, so you can we can each introduce ourselves.
Okay, so let's just dive right in because I know that Shanti has a time constraint and a family emergency she has to tend to. Shanti, you want to start us off? Shanti, you want to introduce yourself? Shanti, can you hear us? Shaina, do you want to start us off? Hopefully, Shanti can join in.
Sure. I'm Shaina Glass. My pronouns are she, her. And my favorite fictional character is Wonder Woman.
And I am Shanti Coaston. And even though I don't have a favorite per se, I would say that Lucy from the Peanuts characters is my favorite right now.
Awesome. So lilibeth.mora, I go by she, her, and I am my favorite character at the moment is Katara. She's a water bender, or from the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So thank you for joining us. We are all actually CSTA Equity Fellow alumni. We are part of a program from Computer Science Teachers Association, but we're just three. We're actually only half of the team that worked on the resources for this graphic novel. Shaina, do you want to introduce the rest of our group?
Sure. In alphabetical order, there's Megan Bowen, Sarah Sears, Shanti Coaston, who's here, myself, Shaina Glass, Lilibeth, Lily, and Elizabeth Naameh. All of us, except for Shanti, were in cohort 2, which means we were Equity Fellow in 2019, 2020. I think that's right. No, 2020, 21. And then the first cohort would be Shanti. Shanti was in the inaugural group. Oh, she's here, so pretty.
So why a graphic novel? Jane Margolis and Jean Rue wanted to amplify the importance of student voice and student agency, specifically in computer science. And this was also to translate the academic research that they were doing for broader audiences. And we know that research is very different from being able to take a graphic novel and be able to share that with not just students, but with other folks like ourselves. So the graphic novel Power On follows the lives of 4 friends as they learn how computer science is shaping our world and how they seek to change the face of computing through their own high school experiences and communities. Shanti, are you available to list out the issues that are raised in Power On? She might not. Shaina, do you want to take this one on?
Sure. So some of the issues this book addresses is why CS for All matters for students, the impact of underrepresentation. It addresses biases in computing and artificial intelligence, identity, culture, belonging, and celebrations. It digs deep into why students should be an ally. It talks about good trouble, obviously student voice and student agency, how CS enrollment in schools, and its implementations. And I know many of you understand that, and positive and negative impacts on technology.
So some of the excerpts from this graphic novel really bring out the issues of inequity in CS. And so well, on this slide, we show you some of the topics that are brought up. For example, on the top left, there's a call out to a police shooting and killing of an unarmed Black man after being misidentified because of AI. And then there's the whole how it goes back to all the algorithms that are being written by computer science. So these are topics that these students explore in this graphic novel. And also the theme for CS Ed Week last year was CS Everywhere. And that's another thing that this book does. It also has these excerpts where they're focusing on teaching students, whether it's highlighting folks in the field that really paved the way for computer science. And on this specific example, it talks about how computer science really is a part of almost every aspect of our lives, like medicine, sports, even like space exploration and even pop culture. So part of the equity, the educator resources include a foundational equity guide. We have chapter guides that have guiding questions and activities, and then we have a glossary index to help you kind of search through. If you're only going to focus on one aspect of the graphic novel, you could utilize that chapter to help bring up a topic that you might be diving into with your units. And then eventually we're going to develop some advocacy kits that we would love to share so that you as an educator and then your students can take action in addressing inequities in your regions.
Other components that the chapter guides actually consist of is an overview, background, or prior knowledge. So to accommodate the foundational equity guide, we're providing you with resources that will help you prepare for that specific chapter. Learning objectives, they're aligned to CSTA student standards. Big ideas and main topics, vocabulary tied back to general academic content, CS academic content, and cultural terms, and just to tie it all in for students. The different students are the characters in the book, different cultural backgrounds, and guiding questions, which include reading comprehension and discussion questions.
So I apologize, y'all. I was freezing a couple of times. So every chapter has a chapter overview, and this is just an excerpt of the chapter guide, and this is the one I actually worked on. So you can see here, this is where you learn about the 4 friends. And we call them friends, not just characters, but they are really friends. And so you learn about their backgrounds, hobbies. You're learning about the first set of computer science words. And not only that, you talk about workforce statistics, computer scientists in the field, and just different conversations about computer topics in this one. And here's where it deals with bias in technology. Also, in that you also have learning objectives. So here we talk about artificial intelligence algorithms, identifying technology that has caused harm, and inequities of computer science through workforce and course enrollment statistics and for Black, Latinx, and females.
For chapter 1, this also shows you the standards and how it is aligned to the CSTA standards, which are in collaboration with the ISTE standards, student standards. Oh, thanks, Lily. And she actually linked it. I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize that either.
That's very helpful.
And I did that again. Okay, here we go. All right. So a preview of chapter one. And so we understand that some of these topics are not easy to just dive into. And so what we did for every chapter is we call out what those topics are. And for example, in chapter one, Shantae created this section of our guide. The main themes that are presented in the first chapter are culture, which include identity and belonging, technology, both good and harmful technology, bias in artificial intelligence, and then the impact of underrepresentation. And so these topics could even be challenging, not just in our classrooms, but in general to have with others. And so what we did in here is we provided some resources. They could be articles, it could be quick videos to help kind of prepare you for these ideas to cover with your students. For example, there's a really good PBS video called I Identify, which is what forces determine your identity. There's an article by Forbes, which is society moving in the right direction with technology rapidly taking over the world? We also direct you to the trailer for the Coded Bias film, which is a documentary that's on Netflix or even on PBS Passport. And then there's that a lot of us are familiar with code.org and what they produce. And so there's a diversity in K-12 computer science, really quick video that's really useful. This is probably the older one. There's newer ones that are out there that we hope that you'd also explore directly on the code.org page.
Also, you'll see, and this is in every chapter as mentioned earlier, some of the vocabulary that's addressed in chapter one is the computer science academic vocabulary, algorithms, artificial intelligence, and then some of the cultural vocabulary that students may not be familiar with. Juneteenth, which we just celebrated, Niños, Kimpap, Pupasa, I think I said that right,
Pupusa.
Papusa, thank you, and Tia. So this is laid out very similarly in all of the other chapters as well.
Right, and every time it's mentioned, they're either directly in the frame or at the very bottom, there's going to be a definition, just in case those are new terms for you. Moving on. Shanti, you ready for this one?
Yes. All right. We also have comprehension questions throughout the activity. I mean, the lessons as well, and for the book. So they're not always related to directly computer science, but every question does have a correlation. So for this one, you know, you can also use it in your English courses and cross curriculum. That was also the goal of the comprehension questions as well. So that's why you see setting of the story, or why is Christine enrolled in summer school? Then we talk about characteristics, artificial intelligence concern. And then, you know, just a little bit of math is thrown in there, like what percentage of Black and Latinx technology workforce it compared us into Black and Latinx population in California. And these are just a sample of them. We have questions, and we also have questions that go even deeper. So it's where you can, you know, pick and choose. And what I really like about the, we have the reflection questions as well. But what I like about the questions is a lot of the questions actually do relate to questions and topics that relate directly to the AP CSP exam as well, on the multiple choice section when they talk about impact of computer science and some other topics. So that's another, like, so some of the questions are kind of directly relate to that as well. So that'll be helpful for those teachers teaching CSP.
Thank you, Shantae. So like Shantae said, these are just samples of the questions that we created, but look at them as like a menu, and then you kind of just pick and decide which ones do you want to cover with your students. So some of the so the ones that Shantae talked about was more like reading comprehension. And then we also, for every chapter, we provide more reflective discussion questions. So for example, what are examples of algorithms that you use in everyday life? Do you think robots can be racist? What is the number or percentage of students that are taking CS in your state? And then we direct you to where you can find that information. And then lastly, in this example, what character do you most identify with so far? So that's something that we hope that students can really begin to reflect on what they're reading in this graphic novel.
And then we also have sample activities as well. And what I like about this is they're more of application. So when, unit 1, we want to talk about identity. And what's great about this is, you're getting to know your class as a whole. We have like who I am, who am I, developing identity, self-esteem. Then we have another one that is you can use for checking in and warm up. And then we have a personal identity wheel as well. So some of these can be for any grade, middle and high school. And then some are particularly focused on middle school, and then some are focused on high school. So the personal identity wheel is really focused on high school students because it's a deeper dive than the other two activities that you see above that. And they all have links, and you can pretty much use it as a Google Doc.
I want to on that to go back one, Lily.
Go for it.
I would definitely also say you as the teacher do these as well. Model that, and it will help as they are digging into this book, because it'll make you feel a little more comfortable sharing your own identity, and helping them to see and identify who they are by sharing yourself as the model, and sharing who you are. It's a great activity for the beginning of the year.
Thank you, Shaina. So some of the extension activities that we had talked about, maybe it's worth like teachers at least learning about what the Coded Bias film is about. So we have some examples of ways to go beyond the, what you're learning in a chapter, and then really diving into these topics. And so specifically Coded Bias, in the chapter guide, we provide guided questions for this film. And then also in this guide, there's also links to the Edpuzzle version of the film. And so somebody on Edpuzzle already took the film and divided it into 3, and then embedded questions into the film so that you can assign that to your students. And it kind of has these stop moments where then you would like ask students questions, whether it's like comprehension or reflective. But we thought this was really useful if that's something you want to explore with your students as an extension activity.
And there's many buying options, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, IndieBound, but also individually, but also if you want to buy a bulk, maybe a class set, or even a class set or department set, or even a district set, they do offer, discounts are offered as well when you buy in bulk.
And yeah, so that's something, if you go directly on the website, you can request it, and then someone will connect with you to find a way to find like an affordable way to buy large quantities.
If you want to join the mailing list to know when these resources will be available, I just dropped the link in the chat so that you can join right now. Please join. These resources will all be free for all educators. So you'll have access to them directly on the website.
Right. I'm realizing this slide deck doesn't have all the other material that we have. So I'm going to pull that up because I know that we have a lot of time. But actually while I'm pulling that up, and I'm going to stop sharing, should we take some questions at this point of time then?
Yes.
For any of you, yeah, if you want to place in the chat, do you have any questions about the resource guide that we've created for you all?
And everyone, I have to go, but I just wanted to pop in, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. So Shaina and Lily, I will see you at CSTA. Anybody else going to CSTA, I will see you all in Chicago, and have a lovely day.
You two be safe.
I will. Shane, I'll let you know when I get to where I get to.
Yeah, be safe. Some questions that came up yesterday that don't think that we answered was, is this available for elementary, middle school, or high school? It was originally set for middle school and high school because of the topics discussed in the book. I would not use this on an elementary level, but I guess it's at the comfortability of the teacher. I'll say that, but it's definitely something that can be used in that middle school and high school realm. And if you wanted to add to that, Lily, I don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that you could probably cherry pick from the novel topics that you can cover with elementary, but I think we have to be like cautious about our are you ready to have these conversations with students? Are you prepared? Do you know how to navigate those kind of hard topics? And that's part of too what we wanted to create for you all was resources, not just to give you a guide to walk through the book, but also to provide you an equity guide so that you can be reflective of the process of like what it means to be a CS educator and what we're doing about how we're educating our students about injustices in CS. And then also how are we fostering safe spaces for learning and discussion? Because in the end, we really hope that everybody would build the confidence to be able to talk about these in general and then teach students ways to be able to navigate through the mess of inequities of CS. So we did share this yesterday at the keynote, how we do have an equity guide that walks you through, it's something that we suggest, of course, we can't make anybody do this, but that we hope that you would go through the process of reflecting. And then also there's some tools that's on our foundational equity guide that'll help you build like norms collaboratively with your students, and then like starting off with topics that are not so intense before you go into like deeper topics like racist AI, for example, because these are issues, topics that affect them right now. And that's something you have to be cautious of. Like, are you ready to do this? Make sure you're prepared and have a way to address things that you may not have the answer to, because that's real. Like, we don't expect people will have the answer to like students about topics that are even just in general hard to address. So something else that we had mentioned yesterday is that there are other resources that touch on some of the complications of like what it would mean to talk about these things. There's a ton of like allyship. And then the one that Shaina was talking about yesterday was, you want to reiterate what we had talked about, the good trouble resources?
Sure. So this is just an example. I think this is in chapter 6 and 7, and it's what is good trouble in addressing student agency and advocacy. And we did a lot of research on which lessons would fit best. A lot of resources already exist. So we pulled things that would be tied to these topics that correlate directly in the classroom. 2 examples of that is how to use data for advocacy. So, and we know that in CS curriculum, they are learning how to utilize data and how to build data and the algorithms that go with that. Understanding, the impact of that data. Well, this is now using it for advocacy. And then the second one is using advocacy for change from the Learning to Give Foundation. Both of these lessons tie directly back to understanding what good trouble is and how that can impact your change.
We also did mention yesterday that there, like Shaina reminded us of, like, there's a lot of material that's out there that takes some of these like social justice topics and it actually is already tied in with computer science lessons. For example, the one that we had mentioned was Minecraft does have a good trouble activity that you can already research, and you can already, start students on that, or even play with Minecraft yourself about building, like a world. that relates to what John, the efforts of John Lewis and the concept of good trouble. So there's as much as we could that we were able to locate. We are doing that for every chapter, that wherever there is a place that we found the intersection of the topics and computer science directly, like lessons, we direct you to that. We even give you all like a suggested amount of time, and to help prep you if that's something you want to continue to explore. So Olivia says, so Shaina, can you take care of the slides? Perfect. So we're going to show you what these resources look like, just because yesterday was like a really brief overview. The Power On chapter guides are fashioned in a way where it's designed like curriculum, like general, like lesson curriculum. And so it'll start off with what the overview is. It'll give you some background knowledge, and then what the learning objectives are. And then we call out those big main ideas and topics, because we want you to know up front. And that's something maybe you two want to be sure before you like decide you're going to dive into a chapter. Take a look at what is whether it's directly or indirectly being called out in the conversation of of the friends in the book. For example, on the first chapter, one of the things that's like really lightly mentioned is home life struggles. Like there's a scene that calls out how one of the friends is having a hard time at home. And, when students see that, and if they relate to that, you want to make sure that you have a safe space for students to be able to process that, because what if it makes them emotional? Because what if that's something that they might be dealing with at that very specific time? So it's really important that when you dive into these types of topics, or even the graphic novel in general, that you have a safe environment for learning, and that students feel comfortable being able to express themselves, and even if they need to take a break from the topic. Because what if they're all kind of like emotionally riled up and they just need a break from, because maybe they saw something in the like they saw an image that reminds them of something that they're currently dealing with, that they have a way to continue to be a part of the learning process, but be able to take a break from the emotional aspect of that. So we do have the vocab terms that are all laid out for you all. We make it as easy as possible. There's even like vocab worksheets if you wanted to use that, like matching kind of stuff, or if you want to just fill in graphic organizers. And then remember, we had told you for each extension activity, we lay it out where it's like, here are all the resources. Everything is hyperlinked in these documents. And then it's like suggested approaches and even the target audience. Most of these are more secondary grade level. But whenever there are opportunities for younger grade level, we will call it out. And there are some that have that opportunity for younger crowds. And then at the very end, there are more resources that we call out, just in case you want to be able to look further in on some of the topics, or even more curriculum that you might want to explore in the process. So I think that's the gist of the resources. What we are still developing, and I don't think it's on this one, but we are still developing more resources. But for the sake of time, we prioritize two things. We prioritize the chapter guides so that folks can already start using it, which some already are, because there are people who are posting it on Twitter that they're already doing it with their students. But the other one was the foundational equity guide. It's because we want folks to be able to have a resource for themselves, as whether it's the teacher or even if it's like a club facilitator that you're taking students to this exploration, or even if you're doing this with your staff. Maybe you're introducing CS to your staff this way, which I think is a really cool way to do. But Shaina, do you want to talk about the advocacy kits that we're still working on?
Yeah, so currently we're building a teacher and a student advocacy kit. It's in the works. The teacher advocacy kit will be released at CSTA's conference in Chicago this summer. But the student advocacy kit may take a little bit longer as we're diving into the resources that will be best suited, and also trying to walk it fairly and finely, a fine line, with states that may have issues with individuals sharing how students can be advocates. So just, it's coming. Just making sure that we are aligning everything correctly.
So do you know this is like the first of its kind. This doesn't exist yet, and so I hope you're all patient with us as we're continuing to build and join forces with other programs that may be more expert in like developing this material. But we are knowing that people are already beginning to use this graphic novel in their classes, that we're identifying to other resources that we don't have listed here that maybe teachers are developing in the process. So on the website, we're going to create more opportunities for folks to share what they're using, so that that could be a part of the collaborative community we have in implementing Power On. So that's, Shaina, that's about the end of our presentation, right?
Yeah, definitely would like, if you have any questions about this at all, to feel free to contact either one of us. We can add our information here in the chat in case you wanted to email us. Other than that, I thank you, and we thank you all for stopping by today. And again, before you go, I'll make sure to drop one more time the link if you want to make sure to receive first knowledge of when these will be released. So if you want to join the mailing list, there's the link for you to connect with us and get those resources.
Shaina, there was a question we actually didn't address because of time yesterday. Do you remember there was like it was like a CRT question?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I think Lynn, Jean sort of started to answer that this book does not mention or address CRT at all. However, computer science does connect to everything. And historically, just how things are set up in our American system, you can't get past it. So, but yeah, Lily, what did you think about it a little?
Yeah, I'm actually glad we had at least some time to think about that, because live, that's a really challenging question. But the image of the book itself already will automatically blacklist itself. I'm sorry, not black. It would be banned. So I apologize for that. It might be automatically banned because of the raised fist. Yeah. So it's a tough question of like, how do we push this book to be allowed to be purchased and taught in our classes when it might not pass the CRT evaluation test? Because I know that's becoming a thing now, that whether it's like districts, school sites, regions, maybe, or states even, might already have like a way for them to review something and decide whether it's allowable. But something that a colleague of mine had shared is that whenever you're bringing up these kind of topics, make sure that you always tie it back to the standards, like the CS standards, because that's what we're teaching. So if when you are, whether it's Power On or any other what might be questionable for your area, like latch it back to the standards, align it, and show them why it calls out exactly what we're supposed to be teaching in the first place. And so we're hoping too that this debate, where more people are beginning to be able to be more open to teaching more of the full and more accurate photo or image of what's happening in computer science, and not like stifling the other aspects of truth that are being now are kind of like even hidden or becoming more secret because we can't talk about them. Because this book really, but the book is not shy about calling out the topics, like even bringing gender inclusivity. That's one of, with one of the characters. Um, Even like how, like the dynamics of um, relationships in the school system, like with specifically, there's a counselor who is, you know, speaking with one of the students about whether or not that student might be best suited for computer science. I mean, there's all these issues that are very real and are happening. So this is fictional, but it's based on real stories. And I know that a lot of us have seen it in real life, these things happening. Like I don't even know if we even had a computer science course in my high school. I think there was, but no one ever told me
I
because
said, really?
I was already labeled. I'm not, that's not my thing.
I
I was
said,
told other things, but not computer science.
I was told you were going to college, but I didn't hear this. Something else that we said too is that the guide, well, really, let's stick with what Lily was talking about when it comes to the book. Understanding that when students read this book, it's going to generate questions. And as a teacher, if you're not ready, use the guide to get yourself ready because they're going to have questions. They're going to question what's happening in their own school. It may not just be on computer science. It could be on any course. Why can't I take this class? How many students actually have access to this class? Why does my cousin have it at his school, but I don't have it at mine? You know, they will start to formulate the questions and also look at what's going on in their community, you know? So it'll stimulate those conversations where you can bring up, well, historically, these are things. And you can come with the data and the resources,
Mm-hmm.
or AKA the receipts, that they can then utilize within your content. So you're still bringing it full circle in appropriate ways. And I hope that those who may have find issue in this, I hope that they realize that it just brings forth truth, because it's all centered and girded in foundation in truth, meaning everything
Right.
that's going to be asked, you can't just make it up. It's not something you can assume is going to happen. It is literally something you have to prove with evidence that
Right.
they
And
do.
yeah, and maybe your district or your site won't approve the like a bulk purchase and that you could distribute to your students, but could they really stop students from themselves buying this comic? Because it's available online. You could, it's at, even Target, for example, I mean, a big box store that you could get this. Can they stop students individually reading a comic of their choice so long as it's not like school inappropriate? So and that's something like Shayna, who's from Texas, has her daughter, I think, is she 12, right?
She
13.
just turned 13, but she read it at 12, and she snuck it into school. She felt like like she had to sneak it. More so because I told her that it couldn't be taken up. You have to bring this book back home because it's it's important. Like we're not going to have books removed from our possession when it's nothing wrong with these books. But she took it to school doing state testing. You know, kids have to read after they finish state testing, and she even took it to the library and told the librarian. But after that, the librarian didn't say anything to her, but she left the school. She's no longer going to be working there because of what the plan is over the summer to remove books. Why there are no librarians there. So they know that this stuff is happening, but like Lily said, you're right. Something that came up yesterday too, Lily, and then I'll stop talking, was here in Texas, a nonprofit org reached out and mentioned, what if they had funding to sponsor teachers outside of school, to get it in the hands of students, and then he can support them if they wanted to use the resources, and then have students be the lead. And I brought up with CSTA that through chapters, maybe we could support teachers in understanding the book, going through the teacher resources, and having that one teacher that's being supported by the nonprofit to share their results, like the impact of utilizing the resources. I was like, that's a really good idea. You know, if there are other agencies who want to support the work that's not impacting or being a detriment to your school system, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's exactly like the whole advocacy kit, right, Shaina? Like that's being developed, but that students would take the lead of like, I want to study this in my class, or I'm going to share this graphic novel with my friends, and for them to see, and grant it is so relatable. This the characters are very relatable. Like I identified with a lot of people.
A
Yeah.
lot of the things that they go through. I mean, getting their first job, needing that responsibility of needing to do that, you know,
Mhm.
work, help support what's going on at home, you know, taking care of little siblings, things that these are not far-fetched, illegal, illicit things. These are
Mhm.
things that teenagers or preteens even, they go through. So I'm excited for you all if you have not gotten the book. I know that they're doing lots of giveaways here for the book. Definitely get your hands on it too.
And then go buy a few and go give it to your neighbors. I mean, graphic, if you're not familiar with graphic novels, it's a, it's a different way of engaging in a story. And the images definitely help. And imagine like this came from research, like the big difference of giving a wad of paper of just like print to this, where you could really tell the story of what's happening and be a part of what's changing this so that everyone can have access to computer science. So in the chat, it's Jackie Moore says, excellent idea. We have to try that here, not because of laws against CRT, but as a way to support classroom teachers. This will be an item for our chapter meeting this month. That is amazing. We are very excited to get this into the hands of more people, specifically the educators first, because I think y'all need to see what's here, what's being offered, and find ways to dive into these topics. It does provide a way, like an opening for a conversation about what's happening in the book. Sounds good, Jackie.
Excellent, excellent. You have over my contact information. That would be incredible.
Yeah, definitely. But like having a chapter guide, because right now it's like it's geared towards students, but y'all trying to give us more work over here.
Well, it's geared
Y'all,
towards students, but a deeper dive into what we're doing right now in this session for
right.
chapter members is what is definitely going to be helpful.
Oh yeah,
Once you can look at it and
right. There's actually two other opportunities specifically with CSTA for if you are a part of the organization. There is for chapters specifically, if you talk to your chapter leader or if you are the chapter leader, consider being a chapter inquiry group where you can actually dive into topics that are related to inequity and identity inclusion. But then also in the summer at conference, we're going to release our online course. It's an asynchronous online course that's going to live on the Coursera platform called Identity Inclusion for K-12 Computer Science Educators. So that's something that you on your own, it's like a 10-week course, just like about an hour-ish a week, where you can begin to explore yourself and the impact that your perceptions have on others and how you can take all those ideas and try like relate it to your computer science classroom. So that's something that if you're tied into CST already, there's going to be some big announcements that are going to be released at the conference, and then you'll all learn via email if you're not going to be there in person. But yes, so thank you, Jackie. This is definitely we're all learning. We're all trying to figure this out. And like with all these social justice movements, specifically in computer science, we're trying to find a way to do this together because we're all having very similar struggles of making this work and improving the opportunities for our students. Are there any other questions or any that anybody wants to bring to the floor? And we'll just send for those. There is a link to the slides. It's actually really important that you become a part of that listserv, that mailing list, because we are still in the process of finalizing, and there's so many checks that we have to go through before it's like publicly released. But definitely, as soon as you're on that list, you'll be the first to know when things are actually available for use in the classroom.
I think this is what we have, Lily, and everyone. We're going to give you back a couple minutes, unless you want to have any questions for us. Thanks so much, Anna, for joining. Can't wait to see you. Just excited for you all to get your hands on this, so you can.
Yes, for sure. It's a good read. It's definitely a good read. I need another copy because mine's already beginning to wear because I keep sifting through it. But definitely.
I know. I need another copy because other people try to take it from me.
AKA your daughter.
Yes, I need one that I can always gift. You're like, that's great, but I need that back.
Yeah, there are some books in life that it's like, oh, I should always have extra copies. This is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I struggle with that. Oh, this is wonderful. And people hold it like so close. And I'm like, can I get that? I don't want to touch you, but I need to get that book back.
But I was thinking too, when the holiday seasons come up, like this is a book I want to put out on the table for the, some kids are like, they don't really want to hang out or they're just on the phone. Mm-hmm. I'd rather you read this graphic novel.
Yes. Yeah.
Than play some game. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think we made it, Lily. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jackie.
Yay. Jackie going to Chicago.
Oh, great. More information to come. Can't wait to see you.
What?
You live in Chicago. You all are this summit is crazy. I've seen people in here in this particular room that live all over the country. We had people in here from Nevada. I know, Albert, you're in Georgia, but Nevada, Texas. Not me. There was another Texas person in here. I've seen people in here from all over in this particular room. It's kind of crazy. So, yay! Yay to the chapter leaders.
Thank you for stopping by.
We will see you all soon.
Do you know if are they gonna post the recordings somewhere?
I think so.
In Hopin, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Lily, for presenting with me.
Oh, we're a team.
And thanks, Shanti. Okay. I think it's just us. Almost.
Yeah, like a minute left, and then we could log off just in case.
Yes. And I got a photo too, so I can drop it.
Oh, good. Okay.
I got a photo with her here and on screen.
There are so many different versions of this presentation. I'm like, I'm not sure if I copied the right one. I realized I copied the. What's that?
I pulled from what you were from that presentation. I put that in this presentation. So
okay, cool. Because I realized I pulled the 45-minute version.
That felt like a 20-minute version.
Yeah.
I was like, man,
Well, actually, you might be right. I might have done one.
It might have been a mini session.
Where's the other slides? Okay. All right. I think we're good to go. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of this event. It's amazing. Great people and from everywhere. So enjoy Constellations.
Yes, talk with you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.